Oh, it's five, a little after five, but we're still sipping tea. We have to relax, relate, and release. Whew, there's too much going on. So much going on. And I'm here sipping my tea. I've got a mix mullein, dandelion, fenugreek. What else did I put in here? I got a lot of stuff in here. But nonetheless, I'm sipping with you. Welcome back to the Tea with April. It's Thursday. You know what time it is, and you know what day it is. And we've got a lot to talk about. I want you to relax and go with me through this because it's hard. It is so hard. Um, we are a nation that is trying to find itself again or trying to really figure out what to believe, who to believe, and who are we. That's unfortunate, but that's what we have to say this week as we have watched the happenings in Minnesota, in the state, but primarily focused on Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities. And then just when we thought that we were seeing enough and we've had enough, we traveled down to Fulton County, Georgia. It's a lot of chaos. I don't know who thrives in chaos. Do you? Because I don't. That's why I'm sipping tea with you. But what I want you to do is sit back, get involved, and stay in that chat because you know we're going to come to you. And today I want to start off our show and our trending topics with what's happening with ICE in Minnesota. This compromise for a potential drawdown. Get this, a potential drawdown of ICE. The compromise by Tom Homan. I want you to take a listen to this and let's talk about this on the back end. Let's take a look at Tom Homan.
When the violence decreases, we can draw down those resources. But based on the discussions I've had with the governor and the AG, we can start drawing down those resources as far as those looking for public safety threats being released and do it in the jail with much less people. So the drawdown is going to happen based on these agreements. But the drawdown can happen even more if the hateful rhetoric and the impediment and interference will stop.
So the drawdown would be the number of ICE agents. Okay. That's what he means by drawdown. But he says, Tom Homan says, no surrendering our mission at all. We are doing it smarter. So that's what he's trying to talk about with this drawdown. Now, let me tell you with this drawdown, the details of what he wants the compromise to be for the drawdown. Jails. This is about access to jails. Okay. When federal agents would focus on picking up undocumented individuals with criminal records directly from local jails. Let's wait and see what the governor has to say. Let's wait and see what the mayor has to say. They want to bypass courts, etc., and go straight to the jails to pick up what they consider undocumented persons that they consider that are criminals. And remember, there's a very small number of these alleged criminals that they are picking up in this process, right? And the fight for refugees and migrants in Minnesota continues. Just this week, we saw something atrocious. We heard the rhetoric, we heard a lot of gaslighting, we heard a lot of bad words directed to a congresswoman by the name of Ilhan Omar, who has been in wars in her home country, who's seen wars, who is a refugee to this nation and believed in this country. But yet the president of the United States likes to call her a fraud and different kinds of things. She was attacked this week at a town hall meeting by a man on the front row who had a syringe with what is now considered vinegar. It was a vinegarish smell, and he's been charged. But I want you to take a look at this attack for a woman who's trying to save and salvage her city in the midst of this ICE overrun. Take a look.
ICE cannot be reformed. It cannot be rehabilitated. We must abolish ICE for good. And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem must resign or face impeachment. Fucking asshole. I don't know.
Oh my God. Oh my God, he sprayed something on her.
I need a napkin to know nothing.
It's not about him, it's about your safety. No, he sprayed something on you. You need to go get checked. Yeah, and it smells terrible.
Two things that really stood out for me. One, that she, after all of this happened, the spraying of whatever substance at the time, she didn't know what the substance was. She said, I'm going to keep on going. She did not want to let them win. It could have been anything, but she wanted to keep on going to say, we will not bow to this negative pressure. And then two, she wanted to fight back. What is it? What is it? Fight. I forgot. I can't even tell you what it is. When you run or fight. Well, she had the fight. She had the fight back in her. I always say it all the time, and I can't even think about it now. But anyway, she wanted to fight back. People are tired. This is what we are seeing in Minnesota and around this nation. People are fighting back. They're tired of the bullying. They're tired of the negative. They're tired of the gaslighting. They're tired of people telling them who they are, and what they're not. The bottom line is Ilhan Omar said, enough is enough. Now, after this, Donald Trump, our dear old president, said, you heard me, dear old president. He said, no, I don't think about her. I think she's a fraud. I really don't think about that. She probably had herself sprayed knowing her. It's so ironic that he would say that when he got shot in the ear and we don't see any visible signs of the shot now. She was very kind in her comments to him. This is what we are in right now. First Lady Melania Trump is calling for unity, unification. It starts with her husband. It starts with her husband. It starts with her husband. Now, I'm going to wrap this trending topics up because we've got our next guest coming on soon. But I want to let you know a synopsis of a synopsis on Capitol Hill. It looks like there will not be a government shutdown. Right now, it looks like there's not going to be a government shutdown. I'm going to spare you all of the wherefore, there, as, is, thus, thou, where art, thou, my Romeo. I'm going to spare you all of that. But I'm going to let you know that they're creating a continuing resolution because the deadline for having all the budget resolved was for midnight tomorrow night. But there's one sticking point that they're taking out of the budget. It happens to be ICE funding. Again, ICE, baby. ICE funding. This ICE funding, let me tell you, it contains $20 million for body cams for ICE, $2 million for de-escalation training, and a lot of Senate Dems were saying, I'm not going to support it because ICE is out of control. They need to restrict their enforcement behavior. ICE that's only trained for 47 days, right? Compared to other policing agencies. This, once again, is bad policing. So they're going to kick the can down the road yet again on this subject of ICE and funding. So we'll see how this plays out. But remember, during the big, beautiful bill votes, ICE received millions upon millions of dollars. They're funded until 2029. I want to go to Senator Angela Alsobrooks of Maryland. We had her on Sunday. I want you to take a look at what she had to say.
I think what you'll see is Democrats will be saying and basically with a degree of unity, that we don't want another penny spent on this operation, and that we want standards to be put in place, that we want this not only this conduct to stop, this mass deployment and the killing of Americans. That's what we
Yeah.
wanted to stop. But we also, when you talk about the funding, whether or not we put more money toward this, I think you're going to see all of us say in unison, no. But again, I want us to level set, April, and let the American people know that these Republicans have already superfunded this. So we need them to stand with us. We need the Republicans to stand with us. But I'm a no about another penny. And I think you're going to find that my colleagues will be saying the same thing. Absolutely not another penny for this.
Not another penny for this. $64.4 billion was earmarked in this appropriations bill for DHS. 10 billion designated for immigration, customs, and enforcement for ICE. ICE, ICE, baby. Din, 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 din. Ugh. Anyway, I'm moving on. Guys. I've got a friend here with me. He is a civil rights attorney. You've seen him on MS Now. He's amazing. His name is Charles Coleman. I want to thank him for joining us. And we're going to go down to Georgia, go down to Fulton County. Hello, Charles. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, April? So good to see you.
It's great to see you. What does that H stand for?
Howard University, the
Oh,
one, the
Lord.
only, the Mecca,
Oh,
my
Lord.
alma mater. You already know. I mean, I'm not going to say, I won't say any disparaging remarks about that cute institution in Baltimore that you attended.
Morgan State Fair, Morgan, we love thee. No, this is all HBCU
Yes,
love
ma'am.
right here.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's okay that you went to Howard. I'm sorry you couldn't make it into Morgan, but that's okay. So listen, because of your legal prowess, I had to pull you in today on what's happening. Help us understand why the FBI is raiding Fulton County elections offices over the 2020 elections. I thought the vice president then, Mike Pence, certified them.
Well, you are correct. Mike Pence did certify them, but to understand what's going on in Fulton County right now, April, you don't necessarily need a legal degree, but what you do need is a political memory. So the first thing that I want you to do is go back to the year of 2020, where Democrats in the House put forward and passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and they
Yeah.
attempted to codify permanently the Voting Rights Act. And then that bill went to the Senate, where it basically stalled and was ultimately filibustered despite Democrats having the tie-breaking vote for a 50-50 Senate. That being said, the reason why I bring up the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is because there are over 30 bills in state houses throughout the country that are intended to restrict people's access to the ballot box and to restrict people's access to being able to register to vote. None of this is happening if Congress ratifies that bill. So this is context that's important when you're talking about Fulton County. Everything that is coming out of Fulton County would be irrelevant if that John Lewis Voting Rights Act had been codified by Congress in the Senate. Now, the other piece of context that you have to understand that you don't need a legal degree for is that Fulton County has roughly between 42 and 43% of Black residents.
There you
It is
go.
43% of Fulton County is Black. They are the largest ethnic group of any other ethnic group, including white folks, that is Black. And that in that area. They are the largest ethnic group in that area. Now, the third contextually important piece that you have to remember is the name Fani Willis. Fani Willis was not the DA of Atlanta. She was not the DA of Georgia. Fani Lewis was and is the duly elected district attorney for the county of Fulton in the state of Georgia. When you ask what is going on in Georgia, there is nothing other than the biggest admission that Fani Willis lives rent-free in the mind of Donald Trump.
Woo!
And in many respects, Fulton County is a prime target for this administration to attempt to make an example of. it's not so much about what happened in 2020 as it is a precursor of what they hope is going to happen in 2026, which is confusion, misinformation, and intimidation to prevent counties like Fulton that have high numbers of us,
Yeah.
43%, where we outnumber folks in critical states. Remember, if you recall, Fulton County was one of the later reporting states upon
Yes.
which Georgia actually flipped to become
Yeah.
blue, to become blue. Shout out Stacey Abrams for her work there. But
Yes.
Fulton County was a critical county in that election in terms of winning that state. And so all of these different contextual pieces, April, coalesce to explain why it has the attention of the president 6 years after the election has been certified and over.
So I saw someone on a live shot, a breaking news live shot. It was live in real time. He said, look, we had free and fair elections. And while it was here, everything was safe. We don't know what's going to happen now. And why was Tulsi Gabbard, of all people, there? Why was she there? Because this is now performative, if you really want to know the truth. For Tulsi Gabbard to come, number one, this should not even be in my mind. This election was certified. Why does he? Is it the fact that you believe that Donald Trump wants to justify January 6th? Because I'm like, what are you trying to do? I'm like, why do you want to relitigate this?
Well, it's not as simple as necessarily justifying just January 6th. It's about, in part, being able to continue to maintain a narrative that he can feed red meat to his base and to his sycophants that effectively, number one, our elections cannot be trusted unless he's declared the victor. And number two, in the event that for whatever reason he is not declared the victor, that the elections are illegitimate, and we have countless histories as to why. And so what he's trying to do is to create that doubt, to create that history. Because here's the thing, April, we both know from being in media that the headline is always louder than the retraction. And so it doesn't ultimately matter that these votes had already been counted, that they've been certified, that this is an over and over deal. Please understand that the headline of federal agents going into Fulton County and their Board of Elections and taking these votes is enough red meat for his ideologues to say, see, I knew something was wrong. It doesn't matter the outcome. It doesn't matter whether they find nothing. That is something that we all know will not get nearly as much attention as the execution of the search warrant. So in many respects, this ability to sow misinformation and confusion and really send his base in different directions is what helps him maintain the narrative that I'm the only one you can trust.
So wait a minute. You say it's sending red meat to his base that wants to see all of this, like to keep the narrative. But guess what? This same base is seething for more red meat when it comes to the Epstein files. Okay? Hello?
And that's another thing. You're absolutely right. And that's another thing. As long as we're talking about Fulton County, as long as we're talking about Minneapolis, as long as we are talking about Greenland, we don't have enough time to talk about Epstein.
Oh, I got enough time. We got an hour.
Now I know we do, but you understand what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. Is that in a given news cycle, there's only but so much that there's room to discuss. So as long as these things continue to pile up, it gets us further and further away from the plot. And that is to his advantage in this respect.
We are listening to my friend Howard University's finest, Charles Coleman. I'm Morgan State University's finest, April Ryan, and you're sipping tea with us. But listen, I want to show you something in the background. This is my new studio. I got this from the 2016 Democratic Convention. It says America. You see that red? You see that red? It's like the H on your shirt, on your sweater. It says America. That was 2016. This is 10 years ago. I don't look, we were upset with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton trying to figure things out back then. Remember that? That was 2016. That was small compared to what's happening here. That was small compared to what's happening here. The president is lying about the price of gasoline, the price of eggs, the price of tuition for college. He's lying. We cannot trust the government to tell us the truth, Charles. We cannot. We see one thing from the cell phone footage, but yet they say another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard is going. Why is she there?
Tulsi Gabbard's presence there has really set you up, which I find interesting. I think.
But why? No, why is she?
It's performative. It's entirely performative. It's entirely performative. But I think, April, for our audience, it is critical that they understand, because this is a dirty little conversation that most people don't have and haven't had. They have to understand the business of media. And the reason why that becomes so relevant in this moment is because everything that you just talked about in terms of the ability to confront an administration that would seek to advance narratives that are not rooted in fact and not rooted in truth.
Preach.
That ability is where the fourth estate, i.e. the press, finds its strength. And
well, wait a minute.
It's supposed to.
We used to find
it's supposed to. What I'm talking about, that's where it's supposed to find its strength. And that is the power of it, because the power of what the press is supposed to do. And I'm using those two words, I'm not using them interchangeably, and I'm going to explain why. The press is supposed to find its strength in its ability to honestly and objectively storytell, to tell people what the facts are around the story and why it matters and what matters about it. This administration has planted its flag at the intersection between press and media. Understand what I'm talking about. And what people don't understand is, when I say press, I'm talking about the craft of journalism. I'm talking about the people who get the 5 W's, who tell the stories, who ensure balance, who do the work. That is press. When I say media, I'm talking about the business, the industry, right? And that is a very different place, because at the intersection of press and media is where this administration has found its ability for weakness. And they have strategically, at a time that I think is very relevant, figured out a way to compromise the strength of that truth-telling. Part of it is enabled because of industry wins. And what I mean by industry wins is you see people trying to figure out the conversion from digital to streaming, and from hard glass to online and non-traditional platforms, which leads to a lot of consolidation, which means that the FCC, if you have paid attention, the president has not at all been gun shy about talking about who should, or openly opining about who should and should not have licenses, what deals should and should not go through,
or who should and should not own such and such and such and such.
Correct.
That's
and so when you are on that media side, now you begin to think about, I want to make sure I don't do anything that is going to draw the ire of the president, as opposed to thinking about what people on the press side should be thinking about, which is, what is the story and what are the facts? And so understanding that ecosystem helps you understand how we got here. And one of the biggest things about this is that from as early as 2016, or 2015 rather, when he came down that escalator, Donald Trump made very clear to anyone who would listen, you don't need to listen to them. You can come straight to me. You can come straight to me. They're fake news. I don't care who they are. At different points, he's attacked everyone, including the lovely Miss April Ryan.
Yeah.
And so as he has done that, he has chopped down the credibility of that fourth estate.
That
And here
word
we are.
fake has killed the media industry.
Yes, it has.
That word fake, that president, I digress. I'm not going to get into, but I
But
will
that
say,
matters for viewers who may not understand, though. That's
yeah.
why it's important.
And I want to say this, guys. Charles and I are friends, and we're not new to this, we're true to this. And I'm going to share something. I hope you allow me. When that Sunday, you were on with Don Lemon when he got in trouble,
Hmm.
and you were on with him, and not long when I reached out to Don and said, Don, you were doing a wonderful job in Minnesota. And then not long after that, because I watched all day, my husband and I watched all day. Not long after that, Charles called me. He said, look, Don is in trouble. He said, we have advocacy groups, don't we? You the one who taught me such and such as
Hmm.
an advocacy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we got right. We all now have to advocate. We all have to advocate. And because of the advocacy, Don did not get, the judge refused because it is First Amendment right that the president still does not understand. But now I got to go. Getting back to Fulton County, I want you guys to hear this, and I'm gonna go to the chat. May is their primary. May is the
Hmm.
primary in Georgia. November is the general election. Let's just see what kind of funny stuff happens between now and May. Because I guarantee you, don't you think, Charles, don't you think this is the lead up to the elections there?
I
With
absolutely think it's not just the lead up to the elections there. I think it's the lead up to the elections. What they feel like they can get away with in Fulton County, I firmly believe will serve as a model for what they will try to do across the country, and which is why there was a federal judge in Georgia who recently rejected a state house omnibus bill in Georgia that was attempting to restrict people's access to the ballot. And so whatever comes out of this, April, is going to be critically important because they will use it in anything that they can get away with to justify sweeping changes across the country, not just in Georgia. So this is something that has to be watched very intently.
So let me go to the chat. Elizabeth says, so this looks like voter disenfranchisement coming to Fulton County. Carol says, we need free and fair elections in 2026. Exclamation point. Ours want to cheat their way to keep the House and Senate. I'm sick of this. You're not the only one, sister. Jonathan, why wasn't the John Lewis Act passed? And we talked about that during the Biden years, policing and the Voting Rights Act. It says, Jonathan says, why wasn't the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed? Girl, the ERA amendment has yet to be ratified! Exclamation point. Arlene says he's trying to get people to believe that the election was stolen. So if that one was stolen, the next one will be stolen. Michael says the real press is on Substack now. Yes, Michael. Yes, Michael. That's what, thank you, Michael. Subscribe, Michael. Yes. Okay. Kay Bacon says, we are here listening on Substack because cannot follow mainstream media. Tasman says, thank you for this discussion with the heart. And then Jane says, take money away from ICE. We have a lot more things that could use money to help people. Amen to that. Thank you guys for that chat. So Charles, I want to go back to Fani Willis.
Hmm.
I was at, it was like in the last 3 years or so, 3 or 4 years, I was at an Essence Festival event with Higher Heights, and many of the Black female prosecutors and DAs were there, and we all huddled. Many of us, I didn't know that there was a sisterhood amongst them. Many of them had been attacked by Donald Trump because of elections, and we all huddled together, giving each other support because you don't know what it means when Donald Trump puts
Yeah.
your name in his mouth.
Yeah.
And those poor women had to deal with that. And as we wait and see our friend Lee Merritt coming in, what do you think about that? What do you think that, oh Lord, both of y'all accused? Oh my.
Absolutely. You hanging out with the bros today.
Well, I'm a Delta, so that's all right.
We know, baby. We know. We know so wrong.
Okay, this is Greek Dome. It's
Yeah,
HBCU Greek Dome
this
here.
is Coleman
So,
love today. This is
yeah,
Coleman love.
so Lee'll be on in a minute. But what do you say as a civil rights attorney to people who have left their positions because of fear of Trump or still in their positions, fearful of this man and what his reach is and what he can do?
I think part of what has to happen is we have to continue to fearlessly rise to the occasion and tell the truth about what's happening. Like, please understand, and it's so funny that you asked me initially about something and I put on my political hat. Now I have to put on like my political science hat just so we understand this. At the end of the day, the attacks that you see on district attorneys and prosecutors, particularly who are black women, like Fani Willis, like Letitia James, or even black men like Alvin Bragg, it will not surprise me to see
Kim
or
Fox.
hear Kim Fox. It will not surprise me if in the coming weeks we hear something about Keith Ellison coming from the president. But nevertheless, um,
Well,
they
Kim
are
Fox used to
all,
be a prosecutor in
yes,
Chicago, yeah.
they are all in Illinois, right? They're all rooted in white nationalism. White
Mm,
nationalism differs from white supremacy because white supremacy just talks about the notion of being supreme or superior, whereas white nationalism is much more a commentary around who should be at the levers of power when it comes to the democratic and civic institutions in America. And there
mm.
is a belief by many on the right, many who buy into MAGA ideology, that those individuals should not be able to participate in those systems, let alone run them. So when you talk about Fulton County, when you talk about Fani Willis, when you talk about any of these things, the reality is Fani Willis, in the minds of Donald Trump, is not supposed to have the authority to be
Ooh,
able to charge him with anything. She is not supposed to have the
why? Because
ability
she is black and she
because
is
she
a
is a
woman.
black woman. So
Come
that
on.
it sits outside of the white nationalist view of how our systems are supposed to work. None of these people that I've named, Letitia James is not supposed to have the authority
And
to
she
call me
does.
in, to bring me in, to have any conversation about anything. And that's
And
why,
she was your mentor.
yes, and that's why these people live in his head rent free because they are not supposed to, in his world, even have access to these systems. So
Right.
there is a dog whistle from all of these legislatures in states across the country that are seeking to restrict access to the ballot because these are ideas, these are policies that are rooted in white nationalism because it is almost to say these are American institutions that you should not have access to because I don't deem you worthy of that because you are not, in my view, American.
And
That is how
Charles,
this conversation works.
and as I leave and as I say goodbye to you, he said, you're absolutely right. If you don't believe, Donald Trump had an interview with the New York Times in the last few weeks, and he said the civil rights movement hurt white people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Civil rights movement helped us come here, be here. Fani Willis be where she is. Tish James, Keith Ellison, all of them. Charles, thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you, my friend.
I'm gonna call you right after because I'm we got some talking to do.
I look forward to it. I
All
look forward
right,
to it.
thank you,
Have fun
Charles.
with my brother Lee Merritt.
Oh, most definitely. That's another friend. Another friend. All right. Guys, that was Charles Coleman, civil rights attorney, as well as a popular host on MS Now. And I want to go to another civil rights attorney by the name of Lee Merritt. He's wearing his Morehouse College. I don't know what is this HBCU day? I didn't wear my Morgan shirt today. But greatness comes from HBCUs. Hello, Lee Merritt. How are you?
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for having me back. And I know it's partially because you spend so much time in DC. You have a lot of folks on Howard. So often when I watch you, I see all the Howard paraphernalia. But yeah, I respect it. I love Howard. I love all HBCUs.
My daughter in love is a Howard student,
Okay.
and my husband likes to wear those little Howard shirts around, and I'm like, put a
Yeah.
Morgan State University. I'm like, why are you wearing that? This,
So I got to,
this is a house divided. Howard versus Morgan, Steelers versus Ravens. I don't know what to say, but anyway,
yeah, yeah.
um, we're going to talk about something serious with Lee. Lee, I want to play, guys. Let's play the clip of Lee Merritt. Um, at a protest. He was an observer carrying a gun. Let's take a look. All right, there we go. Okay, so there we go. So Lee, can you help? Okay, right there. Can you tell us what happened there?
Protest for the murder of a man in North Texas. His name was Marvin Scott III, and he was taken into custody in 23. And he was I'm sorry, and this is important. He was taken in custody because he had a single joint on him. He smelled like weed and he had a joint on him. The reason he was stopped because he wasn't in a mental health crisis. He was a person with a mental health record, and law enforcement should have known how to deal with him. Anyway, I say all that to say is that's why there was people protesting in McKinney. And when they told me that they were planning the protest, these were
McKinney, Georgia.
McKinney, Texas, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
McKinney, Texas. I'm sorry. Yes.
It's near Dallas. When they told me that they were protesting, I sent out legal observers, myself and other professionally trained organizers who were there to make sure that protesters weren't hurt. In places like North Texas, where protesters are seen as less than human often by politicians, we were making sure that they weren't targeted, they weren't struck with their vehicles, they weren't violently assaulted. And of course, we're there to keep an eye on law enforcement to ensure everyone's civil rights were protected. When I did that, law enforcement told me we are going to make a arrest. These people are obstructing a highway, and we cannot allow that to continue. I had talked with the protesters ahead of time, and I said, if you are in the street, you are violating the law as a form of protest, and you will likely be taken into custody. When officers told me they were taking protesters into custody, I entered the street to tell them, hey, you guys are about to be arrested. Actually, after speaking with the captain who was on the scene at the time. And one of his officers arrested me when I went into the street. He disarmed me. He took me into custody. I spent the night in jail. I still think the arrest was inappropriate. No charges came of it. My firearm was returned. But yeah, when I saw someone else serving as a legal observer, Alex Pretti, uh, concealing a weapon in Minnesota, which is a lot less common in Texas. I
Mhm.
wasn't the only person arrested with a gun that day in Texas. It was not a big deal. But under the Constitution, it shouldn't have been a big deal in any of the 50 states.
Mhm.
It certainly was not, and this is why I posted the video in the memory. It was not a justification for the use of deadly force against American citizen when they discovered that he had a gun. Not that he was wielding a gun, not that the gun was even on his person at the time they opened fire, but the fact that he owned a gun has been used as justification at the local level, all the way up to the top to the president, for it to justify deadly force being directed at it, to justify Alex Pretti being shot in his back multiple times.
This is a Second Amendment issue that people aren't talking about. I mean, especially this is happening from a political party that has put ICE on the streets, a political party that believes in the Second Amendment. What do you think actually happened in that moment? As an observer, someone who is an observer like Alex Pretti, also someone who is an attorney from what you've seen, from just what your thoughts are and gathering the information that Keith Ellison has put out and others have put out.
Sticking around on the conversation of the Second Amendment for a moment, which goes to the heart of what happened that day. Um, we expect individuals to be armed in the United States. There's more guns than people in this country, and so being armed in and of itself isn't a crime. But more importantly, I'm a one of the most pressing issues of concern for me as a civil rights attorney is gun violence. Gun violence, and where I grew up, South Central LA, gun violence all over the country, because our nation claims more lives in gun violence than any other nation in the world, and that those statistics are disproportionately black and brown. The
Mhm.
only reason the Second Amendment exists, according to my interpretation and many interpretation of the Second Amendment, according to the plain language, it says so that a well-ordered militia can be maintained.
Mm.
The right to bear arms shall not be abridged. When the founders wrote the Second Amendment, they imagined having an armed citizenry who are well organized and well trained to respond to paramilitary groups being released by the state or by the federal government. In other words, Donald Trump's new Gestapo, the ICE agency, and him using Border Patrol as his own personal military, along with American military men and women, that is exactly why the Second Amendment was designed for people like Alex Pretti to say, well, at least you have a right to go with members of your community, armed, well trained, and organized, to protest overreach by federal authority. In other words, I say all that to say the only reason the Second Amendment exists is for people like Alex Pretti.
Mm. And I can't help when we talk about the guns and everything in the cases that you've dealt with. uh, The one of the major cases that you had a victory on. Um, and I'll never forget that day how, I mean, you had civil rights leaders who marched with Dr. King crying. Guys, you remember the Ahmaud Arbery case in Georgia, a young black man just going into a house under construction, trying to dream of a better day. And then a father and son on the back of a pickup truck shot and killed him, like tracked him down like it was an animal. And in the courtroom, they talked about Ahmaud Arbery's dirty nails as if he was an animal. I'm like, come on. But this is Lee Merritt. This is the man who helped win that case. I know. Talk about that. Yeah.
And listen what happened in that case. Two citizens decided to arm themselves, really three citizens, William Roddy Bryan, Gregory McMichael, and Travis McMichael. These are the men who coordinated to kill Ahmaud Arbery in the street on a sunny day in South Georgia. When those three men grabbed their firearms and began to act like vigilantes, the right said they were doing the community a favor. In fact, Greg Michaels, one of his famous words from prison was that no good deed goes unpunished because
Mm.
Michael and so many in South Georgia, they thought what he was doing was a good thing. The reason the Second Amendment existed in their mind was to keep the black community in check. The reason the Second Amendment existed in their mind was for those men to do the deputy function of serving as law enforcement to police black and brown bodies. And people lined up and praised them, honestly. Candace Owen is one of them. This is why I still don't talk to her to this day, although she's getting a little bit more popular. But so many people on the right said those men were standing up for the community and doing the right thing. And those same people today are saying Alex Peretti
Right.
got what he deserved. So
The
it just
hypocrisy there, the hypocrisy, right? The hypocrisy. And I want to let our viewers know, um when you are a reporter and you have a connection to a source, which Lee and Ben Crump and so many others were in this case, there were a lot of things that they said that were not on TV, that were not in the radio, because they wanted the case, they wanted to win the case. But this is one thing I'll never forget. Lee told me. He said, nobody talked about this, but all along where the street was where Ahmaud Arbery was killed, there were nothing but Trump signs. Am I
mm,
lying?
yeah. Ahmaud Arbery was killed in 2020, which was an election year. And Trump was in office.
2020 again, we got Fulton County in Georgia. And
Yep.
where was what county was Ahmaud Arbery killed?
He was in Glenn County, Georgia, which is South Georgia, a very conservative region. And I knew that there were places that were considered Trump territory, and I knew often those places were hostile to the presence of black folks. But I have never been generally scared in the field until I went to run the path that Ahmad ran. And as I was jogging that path, I came into a neighborhood that looked like an amusement park for Trump. There were signs everywhere on every house. It was like each house was competing to see who was more MAGA. And that's the street that Ahmad was running down when he was shot to death. And you're right, I didn't want to talk about that at the time. I never said that out loud. And the reason was because he was in office at the time. And I had to work with the White House. I had to work with conservative Republicans in the government in Georgia, including the governor at the time and the attorney general. And so it wouldn't have been well to criticize Maggie in the moment.
So in the last segment with Charles Coleman, we talked about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That didn't pass. And the policing issue. We talked constantly on bad policing. We're seeing the same thing now, but this is federal versus local police. And I said something on MS Now the other day. I said, if Trump really wanted to fix this ICE situation, he didn't have to wait for the Senate. He could actually do it himself, just like Joe Biden did with that executive order, because that executive order covered that executive order that I have it right here, that Joe Biden issued, Executive Order 14074, It was for federal law enforcement. It was a mandate for national law enforcement accountability, etc., body cams and stuff. Am I right? He could do that himself.
Absolutely. So much of what we were looking for in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that still has not been passed by the Senate, that is still needed all over the country. President Joe Biden put it in an executive order. He put in a chokehold ban. He put in a no-knock ban. He put in all these best practices for federal agents who only represented, at best, I believe, 50,000 officers all throughout the country. And so when President Joe Biden passed those executive orders or signed those executive orders, I was annoyed. I didn't attend the ceremony. The reason I was annoyed was because I deal with mostly the 800,000 police officers in the country that represent the vast majority of police brutality cases. I never predicted that we would see something like 85 billion invested in the federal infrastructure of law enforcement in a new paramilitary organization in the form of ICE emerge and those protections, if they still existed, if they weren't struck by the current president,
Oh, they were struck. They were
would be
struck. They
really
were struck.
important, right?
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying because executive orders, we kept saying, oh, the executive order doesn't have as much teeth as a law does. But these executive orders are for federal
Right.
policing agencies. And if Trump wanted to do something, if he really wanted to curtail ICE, he could do it with an executive order that will directly impact them. And I wanted to thank you for being here because I gotta shut down the show. It's 5:52. We don't go
All right.
past 6, but I
Oh,
appreciate you. But you wanted to talk about the race issue in this too. And I want before we go, you wanted to look at race. You wanted to talk about race in this immigration moment.
yeah. Well, for so many people, police violence has been a Black issue. And the fact is, although Black and Brown communities are disproportionately targets of police violence and wrongful incarceration, the vast majority of the victims are white. They always have been because the nation is majority white. And because our nation is so heavily reliant on violence and brutality, the victims will necessarily have to include white, Black, brown, and across the spectrum. The difference about what we see happening now that I find interesting is now we have the federal government and their agents operating, right?
Yeah.
Their victims are still disproportionately Black and brown, but it's high profile and centered enough the conversation and the moment that the white victims are emerging and getting airtime. The and for a lot of our white counterparts or people who are not familiar with the ongoing deadliest police culture in the modern world, that has been a real feature of America since the end of Jim Crow, and really before then. For those folks, this has been a very sobering time,
Mhm.
and a lot of them are now understanding. And I believe it was Kevin. I can't remember his last name. Kevin is a popular comedian, and I'll end on this. He said that his friends in the conservative community who were so against being woke now understand what it means when they said, "Well, we don't want woke." Because woke are people who knew that police violence in America was already a problem, that qualified immunity was a problem, and that was is something that they weren't safe from, that it could impact them at any moment.
Not
And
absolute immunity, qualified immunity.
qualified immunity, but now they're dealing with complete immunity. A Trump administration, a federal administration who's willing to block state agents and investigators from actually holding federal officers accountable whatsoever. And woke is becoming people are gradually waking up.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us who have been woke for some time and been shouted at about how it's better to be anti-woke, are annoyed by the people who are so late to the party.
How about that? I woke up this morning. Did you?
That's right.
Listen, while you sitting here, I'm looking around to see if I could grab something from Morgan. I mean, you have Morehouse and Charles had
Howard,
Howard.
you
I
don't
need
see
to
no Morgan. Where's your pride, man?
my
You, I can't
fair
have pride at
Morgan,
your
we
school
love
if you
thee
don't even have
so.
Nelia.
I I will wear my Morgan shirt next time I have you on. But listen, I want to go to the chat real quick. Susan says, "Thanks, Lee, for talking about this important topic. Every American needs to hear conversations like this." That is true. And Lee, we have such a vast community. We have so many allies from so many different walks of life. That's what I love. We can talk our stuff and everybody joins in and they understand and they feel it. Thank you guys. Deb says the Second Amendment has been so twisted by the NRA. Michael says MAGA only likes it when they themselves have guns, not when their political opponents have them. What do the kids do? What they do? Yeah. Susan says, thanks, Lee Merritt. Great listening to you in April. Love and gratitude, courageous conversations. That's nothing but courage here.
Absolutely.
Cecil says, or Cecile says, thank you both for this important conversation. Chris says, great stuff. Thanks. Let's all get more woke. Yes.
That's it.
Jen says, thank you, April, for this enlightening conversation with your two guests. You model a way to stand up to violence and corruption, call it out, and still retain your empathy and humanity. It's impressive. Let
Can
me
I
tell
make
you
a
something.
quick personal plug?
Huh?
Can I make a quick personal plug?
Sure.
If you all want some more information about the legal framework of the country right now, I've partnered with News One to do a legal brief, a weekly legal brief
Okay.
with me, where I'll talk to you about, I think, some of the most important things going on in the legal field across the country each week, released on Mondays. Episode 4 comes out this Monday, and we will be talking about this issue exactly, the Second Amendment, how it applies in the federal context, and the fight between state and federal power.
Well, they heard it here first. And you know, the contrarian is based on fighting back. We have none other than Norm Eisen, Ambassador Norm Eisen, who is our legal eagle, who's fighting to keep democracy alive. So we want to thank you for joining as you're keeping democracy alive and telling the truth, the shame and the devil, and sipping some tea with me.
That's it.
Yes, you are amazingly married. Thank you. Come back again, okay?
Thank you, dear sister. Can't wait. See you soon.
Yes, my brother. Guys, this has been a show. I enjoy talking to my HBCU crew. I'm going to rep my Morgan. You know what? Maybe next week I'll wear my Morgan t-shirt. Morgan State University in the house, Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up on that campus. I'm not just an HBCUer. I grew up. My mother worked on Morgan's campus for 42 and a half years until her death. Okay. And I grew up on that campus. I went to school there. I got an honorary doctorate there with Joe Biden in 2017. Um, that school is my heart. And that's it. And you know what? You guys are my heart because every week we do this for you. Every week we do this for you. And because it's about information, informing you, arming you with information that you can use in these tough times. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I'm going to drink my tea with you to help me calm down. But before I go, I want you guys to subscribe. Subscribe. Your subscription, your paid subscription helps keep this programming going. Your paid subscription. You know, there are subscriptions that it's only the price of a cup of tea, a cup of tea. It's the price of a cup of tea a week. So, or a month, one cup of tea. So subscribe, guys. Please subscribe to The Contrarian and to yours truly, April Ryan. And before I go, I want to give you some breaking news. Breaking news here. There is an effort by the Congressional Black Caucus starting in a few days in February to support the Smithsonian financially, to support specifically the Blacksonian, as it's affectionately called, but its original name is the National Museum of African American History and Culture, because again, there's still concerns that some of the programming, some of the artifacts could be taken, okay? And they feel that if they're armed with the money, they can't touch it. They're not trying to be political. They're just trying to go out here to make sure that the history of this nation is told in its true form. As the president just had people go to Philadelphia. He ordered people to go to Philadelphia and pull down the exhibit of George Washington's slaves, the slaves that George Washington had. Why? It's the truth. We are a nation of Native Americans, migrants, and slaves. I'm the descendant of a slave. I am the descendant of the last known slave on my mother's side of the family. His name was Dollar Brown. He couldn't read or write. He was sold on the auction block in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I will never forget where I come from. Remember who you are. Think about it if your history was stripped from you, you wouldn't like it. So please support the contrarian, subscribe. And also, that's what the CBC is doing. So that happens in February, Black History Month. Well, with that said, I'm going to say farewell to you. Sip some tea. Hubby's making some Cornish hens. I made some asparagus and a cauliflower, roasted cauliflower. So we're going to go eat good. Have a good evening. I will see you next Thursday. Be well.